Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside Corner. I'm your host, Evan Altman, the proprietor, lead writer, editor-in-chief, whatever titles you want to ascribe to me, of CubsInsider.com, the world's 57th foremost Cubs blog. We have moved up. I think we were 67th last week, 57th now. Actually approaching a pretty big milestone. This month figures to be our biggest ever, and I won't hand out the proprietary data on that, but should be hitting a pretty big number for us, and to think about kind of where we came from and how things kind of got started. Maybe I'll share that story sometime. Not today, but at some point, maybe I will. In like one of those, like after we've gotten really famous and wealthy, and the whole thing falls apart. And then like 10 years later, we all get pulled back together for a reunion. I don't know what the media forms will be like at that point, which is something we're going to address a little bit later after I talk about the Cubs win a little bit. But let's get into tonight's beer. Some of you may be familiar with this, but it looks a little different. This is Gumballhead by Three Floyds, and if you notice, it's in the can, like Chevy Chase in European Vacation. I'm actually going to have it right here. I won't take the camera into the bathroom with me. But they just started putting these in cans, and so, even though I've kind of fallen off from Gumballhead, this used to be like one of my go-to beers whenever I could find it, and I'd stop by Three Floyds and buy it by the case. But it's a really super drinkable if you've not had one, although maybe you stopped drinking them for some of the same reasons I did, and we'll kind of discuss that. But I always like to read the descriptions, right? And I've been told I have a soothing voice, and so some people kind of like actually reading through those. I joked one time that I would do a whole podcast about just reading labels of things, and but it was only kind of half joking because I really might do that. But anyway, this is an American wheat ale brewed with white wheat and dry hopped with hand-selected hops from the Yakima Valley, bright and refreshing with a lemony finish. The Gumballhead name and character created by Rob Sires, all rights reserved, copyright 2007. Now, let's go ahead and crack this. Now, what's interesting there, right? And I don't have an old bottle of Gumballhead lying around. I could have researched their old recipe or any changes. But it's interesting that they say hand-selected hops from the Yakima Valley, right? Almost had a mistake. Now I've got a frothy beard. I actually just got out of the shower and applied some stuff to the old beard, so I'm not sure the froth would mix well with the tea tree oils, but we'll see. It takes a lot of work to keep this fabulous mane in such wonderful condition. But so I was going to pull that up actually, and you know what? I do have it here. So let's see. I know they're in Washington State, right? So Yakima, and I think it's Gamache, Gamache. But so what's interesting about hops is generally, I'll try not to get into too much of this, but they grow on vines. They call them vines. They're kind of a conical flower-ish. They're sort of in the again, if I'm not mistaken, they're a cannabis relative to some extent. But so the hops, right? You take them and you can do them, just throw them in fresh. You call it wet hopping. Generally, they're dried out and dehydrated, put into pellet form. So just really compacted little leaves. And they all have different alpha acid levels. I mean, that's why you get certain hops for bittering. When you see the IBUs on a beer, that's international bittering units. The higher, the more bitter the beer. Some of them are more for flavor. And then some of them are used for aroma. That's where you get your dry hopping, as with this that we read there. And so Gumballhead uses Amarillo, which, unlike most hops, most of them just grow, and obviously they're cultivated and cared for, but you can buy them in rhizome form, which is just like a little, it looks like a little piece of the plant, right? You can plant it and then grow your own. And as you can imagine, as with any crop, be it corn or soybeans or anything, it's going to have different properties based on the soil, right? Whether it be the pH, whether it be the type, is it muck, is it black dirt, is it sand? Those things are going to grow in different conditions. And there's been a huge boom in the agricultural industry in terms of being able to produce hops, because as you surely know, Americans' beer tastes have developed significantly to where, we're wanting more and more hoppy type beers, be it, the juice bombs of the New England style, be it more of a just a regular clean IPA, and even other forms of beers. Just the fact that we're drinking more and more craft beer on a higher scale means more hops. And for a while, the craft beer boom was outpacing hop production. So, anyway, long story short, I'm kind of getting through a bunch of these things. But unlike those other hops you can buy in rhizomes and people have them, the farm that discovered that made Amarillo has an actual biological patent on it. So that's the only place you can get Amarillo hops. As such, they're sometimes in short supply. And then, as you can imagine, if it's only from one place and it's only one type of hop, if there's ever a problem with that crop, you think about a vineyard having a famine or something, not really a famine, but a drought, and it kills off their grapes, right? Well, what do? You don't have a vintage that year. So there could be problems with that. There could be maybe some changes in the climate, in the atmosphere, the weather. Climate, I guess, wouldn't really be over a year. It would be weather. Could, alter the flavor of the hops, could change the alpha acid levels. And so now as a brewer, you're trying to tweak those things around. And I could swear, and this may simply be my evolving taste, maybe my palate has changed since I first had Gumballhead. I remember it being much brighter, much more vibrant, and it seems much more toned down now. Is that a matter of Amarillo hops? Have they changed the hop bill because of the cost or availability of Amarillo to include some other similar varietals that are available in that area? So you still have some of the soil characteristics, the same climate that's producing them, but they're slightly different, because you can tweak that and get something else that's kind of a generic knockoff. So anyway, long story short around that, but it's still a super drinkable beer and really good, like more as a session flavor. Because I'm trying to remember, I was thinking it's only like around 5 or 6 ABV. I could be wrong, but somewhere in that neighborhood. So cheers to a Cubs win, right? Huge win tonight. I'm not nearly as stoked as I was if you stuck around. I ran a poll on Twitter, right, to find out was I going to record this or not. And I had should I record an episode of Inside Corner? Yes, no. What the hell is Inside Corner? And I don't even know what the other one was. So the majority answers were what the hell is Inside Corner. So clearly I've not been doing a very good job of advertising this, which was actually evident in the views that I've gotten. That should tell you right there. So I went ahead and recorded because a lot of people still said yes. And, so one of my earlier episodes, sorry, I got to get some beard out of my mouth there. One of the earlier ones I had was after a great win, right? And I was super stoked about it. And this was a pretty huge win too, right? So what's wild is when you get a game like that spans 5.5 hours, it's like, man, what the hell have I done all day, right? So we had, I was going to take my son, he's really getting into baseball more. We're going to go to the batting cages at the local Little League fields. He's getting into pitching, just had a pitching lesson with a local guy here, and really took to it and really wanted to keep working on that stuff. So I was like, okay, well, let's wait till the game gets over. Well, now I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, holy crap, it's 7:30 in the game. We're getting into the 10th inning. I'm like, okay, well, once this inning's over, we'll go anyway. I'll play it on my phone, have the audio on. So we're in there, and so we're kind of tracking it. Like, oh, they got bases loaded, and then, they fail, whatever. So we went through, we did a little tee work, and he switch hits. So we hit some on the left side and the right side. I brought out the L screen, pitched him a bucket, left-handed and right-handed. Then, and by now it's 8 o'clock. Later than 8 o'clock, there's a game going on. The game finishes up. We go over to another field. We're doing some pitching. We pitch for a while. Get that done. We load the stuff in the car. By the time we get home, it's almost 9 o'clock. Hey, guess what? Game's still tied. So we go through all this stuff, and I really didn't miss anything other than a significant amount of frustration, which I still felt even once I got home. So I made us up some grilled cheese. We came down here and watched. Saw the Cubs go ahead and win. But, just a couple of quick notes from it, right? I'm not going to break down the whole thing from you. You should go to Cubs Insider and read our recap there if you didn't get to watch the game for whatever reason. But at one point it was the Heidi game, which was a game in 1968. Was it the Vikings and the Raiders? I was not born then, but I saw it on an NFL blooper thing that we used to watch all the time. And so it was, the game was on, but it was running long. And so this is, back in the day, and it got preempted by the movie Heidi that came on, and most people weren't able to watch it. And at the time, that's the only game that's on. It's not like now you can't turn on Red Zone and watch the other stuff. So as I'm watching this, the game was on WGN. I get it here on my NDY, which is kind of the sister station or offshoot of Wish TV down here, Channel 8, which I think used to be CBS, right? And then they lost that affiliation, so they became independent. But they've got an excellent news program, great stuff. Like the folks at Wish are awesome, and I know none of them will watch this, but I just wanted to share that anyway. And so I'm sure I was not the impetus for this, and I'm not even pretending that I was, but I had emailed the station or tweeted them or maybe reached out to them a few different ways to say, hey, I know, especially being a CBS affiliate, like no longer having the NFL or the college basketball stuff that CBS had, you'd be really, really smart, because this was 5 years ago, right, when the Cubs had changed their affiliations and had WGN and ABC7. I was like, you really need to get with them and see about syndicating those broadcasts, because people in central Indiana are not going to have a way to watch those 40 or 50 or 60 some odd games. And gosh, how great would that be if you partnered up with them? Because I knew at the time that's what they were trying to do, and trying to get that local coverage. Lo and behold, they did, and they have ever since. Now that'll change with Marquee Network next year, but it's really cool to have that local option. Again, avoid the blackouts and all that fun stuff. Anyway, as the game's going on, it's getting to like I think it was in the 14th, and all of a sudden it's like, we now join our regularly scheduled program, and they flipped over to Pawn Stars, right? And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Right? At this point, like, really? And so I brought up the radio broadcast on my phone, flipped over to something else, and then I came back, somebody there woke up and was like, oh, hey, hold on. We're gonna piss off a ton of people if they gotta watch Chumley and these other idiots, instead of watching the end of this like marathon Cubs game. So that was fun enough. But, Kris Bryant with a big home run early, 2-run shots with 2 home runs in this series. The one was out to left. This one went out to right. His first home run of the season went out to right. So that's 2 home runs, if you're counting, if you're keeping score at home. 2 homers to right field. Now, I don't know if you saw my tweet earlier. I hope you did. But does anyone want to tell me how many home runs, and I'm not talking just the pull field, I'm saying let's divide the field. We'll go straight out to center field. Anything to the right of center field prior to this season, how many home runs had Kris Bryant hit in that region? Again, from dead center over to the right field corner. How many of his, however many home runs? And that's, again, since 2015. So 2015, 16, 17, 18. 4 seasons. Got a guess? Lock it in? I'm not going to check these, so it doesn't really matter. You can say afterwards you get it right. 12. He'd hit 12 in 4 seasons. He's already got 2 this year, 2 out of 3. Now, part of that is the way he's being pitched, and late in counts he's getting busted in. But pitchers are trying to beat him away again because, they've seen that he can handle like inside low. They're trying to beat him up and in now. But previously they'd try to work more up and away. Now they're kind of down and away. And so both home runs, the first one was like down by the knees, like lower corner, and he never hit a home run like that on a pitch like that before. This one was not all the way in that lower corner, but it was definitely down and away a little bit. Sorry, I got some notes that I made for myself. Down and away a little bit, he was able to pop that thing out there. 96-mile-an-hour pitch, too, right? So he'd had trouble catching up to those. Stung a couple of, 99, 98, he hit a couple of balls on really well the other day, catching up to things. The hand path is really what's done it. And I didn't bring a bat. I was going to bring a bat down here, even though I'm limited field of vision, so maybe you can't really tell. I'm going to set this down hold on, let me take a drink first. But if you can imagine coming through the zone, and one of the things, and I'm going to sit here, I don't know if you can see my beer pants, but these are like my sexy PJs. I'll wear them for you. I have a really soothing voice, though, again, and it's late, and so, if you need to sleep or whatever, and this helps you, and basically I'm asking you to take me to bed. That was a terrible joke. Anyway, hand path. So, hey, check this out. Hold on, I'll be back. My son left a Voltron sword down here, so let's see how this works. I could have just used this, but that was way cooler. So, a little bit bigger than a bat handle, but if you can imagine, right, so Bryant tries to come through, and I guess I'll do this from the side. Get that elbow to the rib cage, right? So those hands are right here. My bat is fairly level, right? So as I'm coming through the zone, and my bat clears through, I'm into the hitting zone early. I get my hand set, I'm in, and I'm on plane, and my hands are here. Now, the problem that we would see, and this is when people lamented that he was swinging through, 90, 91, 92 mile an hour fastball. They thought he was late. It's not so much he was late. The problem was his hand path was bad. And so he's coming through, but his top hand was getting below his bottom hand. And if you can see the difference, if I'm here and I'm able to come through the hitting zone, or if I'm here and now the barrel of my bat is at a downward angle. And that's one of the things people really talk about with these, they think with these launch angle hitters, they're all trying to get these big choppy uppercuts. That's not what they're trying to do. I can hit the ball in the air by chopping down. I can get good launch angle on it. If I hit it the right way, it's a terrible way to go about things. But the problem is he was coming through like this. And then if you can imagine, he's used to being here. Well, if he's here as he's coming through, he's swinging through it. He's swinging under a lot of those pitches. So we saw that a lot when he was, and it's still there. He's hitting some pop-ups. But what we've seen is he's really cleaned that up. And now we're seeing more of the line drives. We've seen him, pull the ball better. And, so you can look in and adjust away, right? And so if you're looking for that inside stuff and then they throw something outside, you can still adjust to that. But if you're looking out and then trying to go in, you're going to get beat there. So he's fixed that to some extent. He looks more like himself. That was really good to see. Schwarber stung a couple of balls today. Didn't get great results with all of them. Wilson Contreras with another home run. He finally got a day off yesterday. His first day off, like legitimate, I think he'd caught all but 2 innings since Vic Caratini got hurt. And so that's paramount for Joe Maddon to figure out ways. And Taylor Davis actually did a pretty good job Saturday catching Yu Darvish, which, gosh, we didn't talk about that. What a gutsy performance I thought by him. And I've been just banging this drum for so long for Maddon to leave him through. You're not going to pull him after the second inning, but dude had like 56 pitches through 2 innings, right? He finished with 110 after 6. He finished 6 innings, which means in innings 3, 4, 5, 6, he only had to throw, quick math, 54 pitches, right? So fewer pitches in the last 4 innings than he had in his first 2. 4 walks and a hit batter in the first 2 innings. None in the subsequent 4. Got the velocity up on the 4-seam. His 4-seam was all over the place early on. He got that dialed in. Helped that the Cubs put up a 5 spot for him in the top of the 3rd. But to see him work through that, here's the thing. It's not the first 2 innings that were really cool to see Maddon let him work through. It's the 6th inning. He gave up a leadoff homer, and then he walked the next guy. Could have pulled him, right? Because he was after the walk, so the last pitch on the walk, I think, put him at 98 pitches, I believe. And he threw 96 in Miami, in the one where he had the dick shot on what's his name, to, when he threw it 99 and hit him in the junk. And he got pulled after that at 96 pitches, I believe. And so for him to be at 98 after a leadoff homer and a walk, you're thinking, okay, hey, season high in pitches. You've done okay to this point. We got a big lead. It was like 7-1. Let's go to the bullpen. But no, Maddon sent out Tommy Hotovy. What happens? Darvish goes strikeout, ground out, gets out of the inning. And that is what I've been waiting to see from him. And maybe Maddon was really smart and he brought him along and he got him to this point and he knew his confidence was up. But that was one of those moments where he easily could have been forgiven. I don't think anybody would have gotten on Maddon, other than maybe me, because I want to die on that hill anyway, for pulling him at that point, right? But to me, by letting him stay out there, by letting him work through that and have success through that, dude ends up going 6 innings. He throws 110 pitches. His velocity looked good. His control got better. He got the win. And I know, I wrote about this earlier, I know a lot of people don't think pitcher wins are important, and they're really not as a measure of like actual performance, but they matter to those pitchers. That matters to Darvish, and I do think in a situation like he earned that win. He legitimately earned it and really pushed through some things. Now, he could go out and lay an egg the next start. I don't know, but I really feel like that's one of those things, that's a mental hurdle for him to clear, to really just buckle down after those first 2 innings and clear through that. So awesome to see. But back to tonight's game, Jose Quintana was solid again. Of course, a dude from Colombia got roughed up by a guy named Escobar, hit 2 home runs against him. And that was a terrible joke. Again, another one of my Twitter jokes. I'm trying live. The worst part about stuff like that is like I could drop a joke like that and legitimately your response right now, because there isn't one, I'm talking into a camera, is identical to what it would be if I had a crowd in front of me. So So it's like kind of tough, right? Yeah, yay! Was that actually funny? And usually, like, my jokes are such that nobody gets them for like 10 seconds, and so I've already moved on with stuff, and then people start to chuckle, and then they forgot what they were laughing about, and they didn't listen to what I just said. So it doesn't really play too well. Like I once, and I'm not even going to tell the joke because it's really dumb. So let's move on. So really good stuff, right? Tyler Chatwood comes in. So Dylan Maples' experience, gets the first two guys out, then goes walk, walk, walk to load the bases. Then what do? You go to Tyler Chatwood, because of course you go to Tyler Chatwood with the bases loaded and the game on the line. And he gets the out. Lo and behold, he comes up and has to bat for himself, blasts a double, just pound. I think he got down 0-2 and then worked it to a full count and then just hammered a double. Like one off the wall out in right center. And then, of course, because he's never had to run, he pulls his hammy coming into second. He ends up coming around to score. But the Cubs pitchers, man, between him and Lester, like, these guys need to quit hitting so damn well, because then they got to go out there and run, and then they get hurt. But the Cubs ended up putting up 3 runs to go up 6-3. Right, Zobrist hits a booming triple. Bryant had reached. There's got all this stuff going on. And then, of course, Kyle Ryan comes in. They almost give it up. And then Alan Webster comes in and barely, the skin of his teeth, gave up some hard contact, got the win. So, but something like that, right? It's this gutty, kind of, and how perfect was it that they get Monday? They got Monday off and they got Thursday off. Like, there's so damn many off days here early. It's crazy. Then they come back to Wrigley Field on Friday, May 3rd, which, as many of you are aware, is the first day that Addison Russell is capable or is able to be activated from his 40-game suspension for domestic violence. Now, a couple of things, and I think I've discussed this before, some things to not say about domestic violence. It is not a matter of youthful indiscretion. It is not a mistake. This isn't, we could say this is a second chance, but we don't say, oh, he was young and he had this money and things. No, we don't frame these things up to marginalize the problem. Okay? Second chances, yes. People get second chances. You know who gets a second chance? People who own what they have done. Right? We don't say, oh, not everybody gets it right the first time. No, it's not a matter of getting it right. Right? Beating your wife is not getting it right. It is getting it wrong. Like tackling your wife to the pavement, choking her, knocking her down in front of your children. That is getting it wrong. But this isn't like a physics test that you screwed up and didn't study for. And the teacher or the professor or whomever was like, hey, I know you got some stuff going on at home and I understand the problems there. I'm going to let you do a retake because this isn't like you. That's not this. This is not retaking a test. This is someone who needs to make real, meaningful, lasting changes in his behavior, in his life, in the way he interacts with other people, namely women, in his life. That has to happen. We don't know if that's happened. We hope that's happened. But the Cubs have been really guarded about this, right? And I mentioned this on a previous one, so I don't want to go into too much of that. I'd rather just direct you back to that one. But they've spun this narrative pretty heavily. And so today on Twitter, there was some stuff that came out. I think I had it in there. So Cheryl Ring, and I want to make sure, so Cheryl follows me on Twitter. I follow her on Twitter, but I do want to make sure I'm getting her info right, because I think she's with Fangraphs, right? So, and she's IBWAA member, Fangraphs, all heels on deck, right? So, a lawyer, so knows what's going on there. And so she had these tweets, and I copied these in here so I didn't have to scroll through. But I'm reading this off here, so I apologize that I'm going to look over this way. I hope this still picks up, but it says, so the Cubs are making a concerted effort to control the narrative with respect to Addison Russell. They're approving positive redemption stories, and in private going after those commentators who are critical of Russell and the Cubs' approach. And in a subsequent tweet, she says, I spoke to one media member who told me they were privately instructed by the Cubs to lay off Russell and threatened with reprisal if they didn't. Now that gave birth to a piece on Horrible Talk, NBC Sports by Bill Baer, and I don't know Bill. and I'm going to be completely honest. While I don't believe, and so he cited that, and then Mike Gianella from not Fangraphs, from Baseball Prospectus had subsequently tweeted something that he had heard something similar or the same, and so Bear's piece, and the I guess the problem I had with it was it felt like it was really poorly written, just in terms of sentence structure and actual just the formatting of the piece felt like a first draft that was rushed out to be first rather than to be good. And so just, again, as my role as an editor and as a writer, that was like nails on a chalkboard. I was put off by that, not by the content itself, although that part and the whole idea. So this stuff started kind of going right before the Cubs game started. And so people started tweeting at Jesse Rogers asking, well, is this true? Is this true? And then Jesse's initial response was like, it was not true or completely false or something, and like in all caps. But then right afterwards, he has like a parenthetical, I should probably pull that up, that's like, well, at least as far as I know. And so here's kind of the funny thing, right? And that's the part of that bothers me, is it seems like there's a bit of this idea that just because you're a beat writer and you haven't heard it means it's not true, or because you're anything and you haven't heard it means that it didn't happen. Well, the fallacy there, the very obvious fallacy there, is that beat writers aren't the only people covering the Cubs. There's a ton of people in radio. There's a ton of blogs. There's other different magazines. There's national outlets. There's people all over the place. Now, I will say this, because I want to absolutely give credit to where it's due, because those beat writers have much closer access, much more stuff, both on and off the record, particularly the latter. They just have a ton more context that doesn't go into, some of it does go into what they write. It colors what they write, certainly. And they've got a lot of information that people like me don't have, okay? You can like what I write. You can hate what I write. You can be upset about the fact that I don't have all the stuff. I have to get quotes from those guys, and I cite them, but I don't have direct access. The Cubs will not credential me. And I'm not saying they should, but they don't. So I'm only putting that out there in terms of that access, right? But what was bothersome is Jesse kept going in and in and in. Like, I haven't heard it. These other guys haven't heard it. He cited Bob Nightingale, who apparently was right next to him at the time or something, and he's known for a long time. Bob had a piece about Addison Russell that was this redemption narrative that was a complete puff piece, a total softball that read like something like that Scott Boras had paid him to write about his client, right? And so the idea was that, well, the Cubs didn't have to approve that, and I don't believe for a second that the Cubs are having to approve things, that they're forcing stuff to go through them. The Cubs, and Jesse mentioned this, the Cubs would prefer Russell not talk at all, because let's face it, Russell's a dumbass. And he's going to say something stupid, and as Jesse put it, he's probably going to put his foot in his mouth if he does talk. The Cubs want him to shut up. And so I do believe there's probably some real care being taken as to who he talks with. But I also believe, listen, you are crazy if you think any organization, and I'm talking sports, I'm talking major businesses, if there is a scandal of any kind, and I don't want to belittle this by saying it's a scandal, because it's, that kind of implicates or indicates maybe something a little bit less severe than domestic violence. But when you've got a topic of a sensitive nature, and again, this is the Cubs' problem. They've chosen this route, right? So I'm not playing them as a victim. They have chosen this. This is on them. They buttered their bread. Now they got to sleep in it. They made their bed, now they got to eat it, right? So let's mix those metaphors up. But any organization is going to control the narrative, or try to control the narrative to the greatest extent they possibly can. And that is going to be what information they share with or withhold from media outlets, which media outlets they allow to have access to certain things, how much, all that stuff. And so that part you can imagine. At the same time, I think anyone who's been around this Cubs organization, who's followed them, whether you're a fan, maybe not just a fan, but you probably have dug in a little bit more, whether we look at the way things went down with the rooftops, whether we look at the business decisions that were made with the mural, the Lindbergh mural, with the cake for, what was it, the Museum of was the Museum of Natural History, whether you look at the Ron Santo memorabilia that ended up in a dumpster, oh my God, the stuff with Tom Tunney, the political drama, the stuff with the Ricketts family and the emails and all this. All along the lines, there have been some serious missteps from a political relations standpoint. Now, a lot of that comes down to, like, I follow the Cubs, I have much more of a hyper focus on them, and so those things are going to stand out. All organizations have missteps like this, so I'm not going to try to paint the Cubs as this unique beast that they're like awful and everyone else is just wonderful. At the same time, there are many things they have done and said and kind of carried on with that feel like they kind of have this notion of invincibility, that they're not really having the foresight to think, you know what, that's kind of a shitty way to say something. Or, maybe we should think about what we're doing and saying and how that will impact people and how people will take that. Rather than this idea that Tom Ricketts kind of put out that, I talked to the real fans and they all know what a great job we're doing. Like, dude, if you're doing that, you're either delusional or you're lying. One or the other. Because there are a whole lot of fans that don't dig what you're doing, right? And so, understand that if you surround yourself by yes men and you hear that enough, pretty soon you're going to believe that's the truth. I don't know if that's what's going on here. I personally can say, the Cubs have never, one time the Cubs did reach out to me about something, interestingly enough, about beer, which I need to drink before it gets warm. They're actually serving Gumballhead at Wrigley this year. But it was about an artist rendering prior to the 2015 season that said beer was going to be $10. So I wrote about that, what a raw deal that was for vendors, because now it's 10. You don't break change. Hand them a 10, they don't get their beer. You hand them a 20, you get your 2 beers. There's no tips for them. And the Cubs actually reached out to me like, hey, that's not something that's been decided. That's not actually true yet. And now it's more expensive than that. But I think it goes up to $12 on some of these guys. So anyway, that's the only time I've ever had them reach out to me, right? And so it was a factual thing. So do I believe that they are going to people and telling them, you will write this? No, I do not believe that. Do I believe that they are telling papers that they have to submit things to them, like the commissioner's office needs the lineups first, they can send them to Vegas, that they can either approve or disapprove or edit those themselves? No, I do not believe that. Do I believe that they have heard or seen things written about Addison Russell or about them, and that they have made it clear in no uncertain terms to those outfits, to those organizations, that they don't like the way those portrayals are coming out? Absolutely, I believe that. I have no reason to doubt it, right? Now, again, they haven't come to me and said that. I doubt they've gone to Bleacher Nation and said that. And part of that is because we're not credentialed organizations. We don't have that same level, right? There's not that same quid pro quo. Now, the Cubs do give us some access, and if they wanted to, they could blacklist me in a heartbeat. But as it is, we get conventions or passes to Cubs convention. We get some access to some other stuff, but I guess I shouldn't tell them I'm a season ticket holder, because I suppose they could go in and kick me out of those. But I think they also know that the shitstorm that would follow, like banning or blacklisting somebody like us, like they can't do that to the Chicago Tribune or the Sun-Times or the Score or something like that, right? That are affiliated organizations, the Athletic, right? They can't go and just blacklist those people and pull a credential, because that would really, really look bad, and it would be a huge breach of protocol. And so, but if they were to do something like that, it would have to be worth something to them. What's worth even less is honestly, I don't think they see us as much of, they might. I don't think anybody on the business side of things reads anything I write anyway. Do I think somebody from the front office might? Maybe. But it's not worth it to them, because the stuff, the blowback they would get, because guess what? If they pull any access from me or they come after me, not that they would have any reason to, but then I think I've got enough pull that then that could share, and that could spiral into something much, much bigger for them than what it would be worth to just, they don't care. I'm a gnat on their elephant ass, as far as they're concerned. So it would be silly for them to deny me something. But if it's a bigger organization, and one that I think maybe they see as being more of an actual partner, I could see where there would absolutely be some friction and some desire on their part to guide that narrative more so than anything else. So as far as threats, is that reduced access? Is that, not being able to interview players? Is that not having players made available? Is it, cutting back on clubhouse? I don't know what that looks like. I have zero idea. This is all, I'm kind of theorizing some things, but again, I do want to put that out there, that as much as I've taken pains to distance myself from being a journalist, like, I am not a beat writer. I'm not on the beat. I don't have the access those guys do. I don't have the connections those guys do. They do a wonderful job. They're doing the interviews. They're getting that stuff. And they have so much information and just a wealth of knowledge that I can't and don't have. At the same time, it is completely erroneous and, really, I'm trying to think. There's a condescension there if you believe as a beat writer that you are kind of the keeper of all the mysteries and that all information is known to you, because that's just a blatant lie, or it's just being insanely ignorant. Because if that were the case, I'd never break any stories. If that were the case, Cubs Insider would not have been the first ones that said the Cubs probably aren't actually going to spend money. We wouldn't have been the first place that you read about Shiraz Raymond leaving the assistant GM to join the Rangers. We wouldn't have been the place that broke the news of Luke Haggerty's elbow surgery. We wouldn't have been the place that first said that Nico Horner was being assigned to Double-A and skipping High A Myrtle Beach. And I'm not saying that as like a humble, but I'm not. People call it a humble brag. Like, I'm not being humble. I'm pretty proud of that we broke in those stories. It wasn't all me. There's other people that are out there. There's other folks who write for us and have been a part of all this stuff. It's not me. But what I'm saying is, we've had information first on some things about the Cubs and the organization that we've then confirmed. We've gotten them from multiple sources. And so there is information out there that is not immediately and primarily available to beat writers, despite their closeness to the organization. Maybe because of their closeness to the organization, that some of that stuff kind of doesn't end around. And so again, it's really, silly, insert adjective here, to take this stance of like, well, I haven't heard it and none of the other beat guys have, so I don't buy it. Come on, man. You can't be that naive. And I get it, right? A lot of these guys don't really have the ability to speak out as much. Their job's dependent on some of those things. If they do get too crazy with it, if all of a sudden they piss off Russell or somebody else in the organization, maybe that hurts their career in the future. I don't know. I don't worry about that stuff. I don't know what their motivations might be, and I don't want to speculate on it because that's dangerous too. What I do want to say is, it's entirely possible Addison Russell is activated on Friday, which I think is dumb as hell, because Javi Baez is doing perfectly well at shortstop and has a hell of a lot better bat than Russell. Let's not forget that even in his best season in 2016, when he had 95 RBI, his WRC plus, which is an aggregate offensive measure, right? The league average should be 100, but the league average is always a 97. So anyway, and then each point is a percentage worse. So at his best offensive performance was 2% worse than the average offensive player. Now, his defense makes up for a lot of that, right? It has. But his arm's kind of crap. He's hurt a lot. And I think he was at like an 83 and an 80 WRC plus last couple seasons. Those numbers have dropped. He does not provide enough from an offensive standpoint to make up for. So the gap between him and Javi defensively is not nearly as great as the gap between the two offensively. Now you look at over at second base. Would he be a better defensive second baseman than Ben Zobrist, Daniel Descalso? Absolutely. Would he be better than David Bodie? Yeah, probably. But again, at that position, what's the incremental difference worth? Because he's a worse offensive player than any of those three. He's a clubhouse distraction. Even if the guys in the clubhouse all love him, they're all going to be asked about him constantly. And we saw how that went. So now you got them saying stupid things, right? And the team needs to do a better job of coaching them up for that. But now you're bumping somebody else off. Okay, you bump Mark Zagunis off. Okay, no big deal. You can go without that. Okay, maybe Kris Bryant plays the outfield more. Maybe Bodie gets some run out there even. But you've still shifted things around. The dynamics aren't quite as good there. So everything changes. It's not like insert, tab A into slot B. It's not that easy. And you're not doing it for an elite level player. You're doing it for a mediocre at best hitter with a really good glove. Well, you got an elite level hitter with a pretty elite level glove. So, again, I think they would be stupid to put him in there right away. I'm not in that position. I don't see what's going on. I don't know everything about him. But I also don't really care because he doesn't sound as contrite as what I think he really should at this point. I also think he needs more time down in Iowa to just reacclimate to some of these things and for the Cubs to kind of figure out what's going on because they got a pretty damn good run going on right now. They're back to 2 games over 500. Do you really want to mess with that right now? I wouldn't. I don't. And I'm not really looking forward to Friday. Unless that means they option him down to Iowa and he stays down there for a while, and then we can kind of put this conversation off. But in the meantime, that's about it. I've already rambled longer than I thought I would. I just hope my camera's still actually running, that I didn't run out of space on there. But yeah, I mean, an awesome win. Dropping the first game, winning the next 2, and they keep making Meatloaf, right? You keep winning 2 out of 3. You keep winning 2 out of 3. They got 2 in Seattle with a really good Mariners team, and then they get to return home, and then finally, get to play the Cardinals and get some things going. I may be at the game on Saturday. I don't know. My son's games keep getting rescheduled, so now he's got games scheduled Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening in particular. So if we get rain down here and that gets canceled, I'll be up there. Come find me. We'll share a beer and I'll talk softly in your ear till you fall asleep. So anyway, thanks for being here, and for the 58% of you on my poll that said you didn't know what the hell this thing was, I hope you've checked it out. I hope maybe you heard or saw something that you liked, and you'll come back and maybe tell some friends, and then we all kind of hang out together for a half an hour at a time. So again, I'm Evan Altman. This is Inside Corner. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you next time.